In this section, we examine a framework called Stop, Reflect, Act, and find out how you can use it to develop partnerships. This framework can be extremely helpful during interactions with families. SRA, as we'll refer to it, assists us to support and hear a parent. SRA is a broad but very useful framework that can be applied to all kinds of everyday interactions.
While the SRA framework can be used at any stage of an interaction between a parent and an early childhood educator or school staff member, a critical time to implement SRA is at the start of a conversation. The first phase is stop. We pause and listen to the person speaking. This can be more difficult than it sounds. It requires us to cease everything we're doing and turn down the distracting internal chatter in our heads. When a conversation is started in a busy environment, it's easy to respond automatically. Automatic responses are common for all of us. They provide a way to manage the enormous amount of information we are bombarded with each second of each day. But it can mean we respond without fully understanding the situation. It's important to stop and really listen. Our attending skills help us to do this. The second phase of SRA is reflect. This is where we do an internal check to think about the meaning of the speaker's words, behaviours and facial expressions to gain insight into the message that's being delivered. Taking a moment to reflect gives you a chance to think about the issue and what you might want to do next. When you reflect, you ask yourself questions like, do you need more information before you address the issue? Perhaps you need to know more about the culture or values of the family. Is it within your role or responsibility to respond to the issue being raised? Do you need to consult with a colleague or other professional? How urgent is this issue? Is it the appropriate time to answer, or does it require further consideration to adequately respond to the situation? How are you feeling? And how might the parent be feeling? What impact might this have on how you respond to the situation? Taking time to reflect helps us to identify assumptions that might affect our interpretation of what the parent is saying. There's lots of multitasking involved in communication. The listener moves between reflecting and listening and back and forth again to check their interpretation of what is being said as they go along. The reflect stage generally happens in seconds. Once we've decided what to do, we move on to the next stage of the framework, act. This is where we move from internal processing to action. For example, demonstrating that you are listening by confirming verbally that you've understood what the parent is saying, or perhaps asking for more information by using open questions. Taking action may also involve deciding to consult with a colleague, director or principal. In such a case, it's good practice to ask for permission from the parent first. Another action might be to let the parent know that their query is outside your expertise or role and that you'll help to find someone else who can offer support. Or you might suggest arranging an alternative time to discuss the issue without distractions. You'll find that you'll need to move back and forth between the act and reflect stages. For example, you may still be unclear about the issue, so reflecting again helps to generate questions for further clarification. You then act by asking those new questions. And then it's time to listen again. You go back to stop, and so on. Throughout a conversation, you continually move between the stop, reflect, and act stages. While many of us do naturally engage in self-reflection, the SRA framework offers a more explicit understanding of our skills and helps to articulate what's involved in order to hear and understand others.
Let's look at how SRA works.
Bye.
Petra, I need to talk to you. It's pretty important.
Okay, sure. Let me clear the koala room and we can talk in there.
That'd be great.
Good. Would you like to tell me what's happening, Simon?
Well, I'll tell you what's been happening. Those boys have been throwing sand at Jordan again.
Okay, can you tell me what you know?
Well, yes, I picked up Jordan today and he had sand all over him. It was in his hair, down his shirt, everywhere. And I asked him what happened and he told me that Andrew and Marco had wanted to have a sand fight with him.
I'm sorry to hear that. It would be helpful to know when it happened.
Well, after lunch. Why weren't there any adults there? That's what I want to know.
First, let me just make sure I understand everything that you're telling me. Jordan, Marco and Andrew were playing in the sandpit this afternoon. Marco and Andrew suggested a sand fight, and Jordan ended up with sand through his hair and clothes. I haven't heard anything about this from the educators who are working today. Do you know if Jordan spoke to anyone about this after it happened?
No, he didn't want to get told off.
Simon, I can see this is upsetting for you. It sounds like it's also possibly frustrating and disappointing that this has happened again. I'm concerned for Jordan too. Do you know if he can come in today and speak about his version of the story?
I've just told you his version of the story. He's gone home with my sister.
Are you okay for me to talk to the boys tomorrow? I need to hear from each of them and understand why this keeps happening. I'll also need to speak to the educators who are supervising today.
Yeah, that's fine. I think you should talk to all of them because this is really starting to upset Jordan and it needs to stop.
I agree. We don't want Jordan to be upset. Have you thought about any other ways of handling this?
Well, other than talking to the boys, I guess if it does happen again, they could, be sent inside and not allowed to play in the sandpit.
Well, I'll need to check with our director on the centre's policy in regard to that. But I'll also talk to the educators who are working today to find out if they know anything about it. And tomorrow morning, I'll talk to each of the boys about what happened. How does that sound? And we'll need to meet again tomorrow. Would that suit you, Simon?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll see you the same time tomorrow.
Okay, Simon. I'll put that in the diary.
Yeah. Thanks for your time today.
By seeing what our educator was thinking, we were given an inside look at the reflection that was going on. After each stage of reflection, action was taken in the form of a response to the parent. You could see how much multitasking was taking place. The educator was moving between the reflect and act phases, as well as stopping to listen. The educator worked to understand the parent's concern and then communicated to the parent that he'd been heard and understood.